Hello, everyone. This is Senior Biotech Analyst John Vandermosten. Welcome to our channel that educates the life sciences investor on exciting advancements in drugs, biologics, and devices. For more content and news like this, subscribe to our channel below and like or share with others. You won't want to miss these updates on Allarity Therapeutics clinical programs, which have been refined to improve patient outcomes and clinical trial recruitment. Jim Cullem, Allarity's CEO, is joining me here to discuss the trial modifications. Jim, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, John. It's good to be back with you.
That's outstanding. Allarity recently announced updates to its trial structure for both of its phase 2 trials. So you've got Ixempra and Stenoparib in separate studies being investigated in breast cancer and ovarian cancer. How big are these trials and how have they been put together?
Yes, John, we do have our two ongoing phase 2 studies. As you mentioned, they're both monotherapy studies. Our Ixempra study is only at sites in Europe because that is where we have the development and commercialization rights for the drug. In the case of Stenoparib, our PARP inhibitor, we have trial sites both in the United States and in Europe. They're both about 40 patient studies in size. They both utilize their respective DRP companion diagnostic for each of the two drugs to prospectively select and enroll the highest likely responder patients. So that's how they're designed.
Okay, very good. And you made some changes that should enhance enrollment. Tell us about those.
We did indeed, John. We just recently announced that. Like all therapeutic development companies, we need here at Allarity to be flexible and adaptive in making modifications as we need to our clinical program strategy based on what we're seeing as those trials progress. Of course, there's always a lot of uncertainty in human clinical trials. Oftentimes what you expected to see, you may not see. So what we've done in terms of the protocol amendments is just using the information that we've seen so far to make a few tweaks, for lack of a better term, in each study so that we can hopefully enroll more patients that are likely to benefit at a faster rate, and also that in the case of our Stenoparib study with changing the dosing regime a bit, hopefully provide a higher level of therapeutic benefit to the patients. We've also recognized, as have pretty much most companies in our space, in part due to the COVID setbacks at trial sites, we needed to expand the number of sites that we have in order to stay on time and get these studies concluded.
So I think that's gonna accelerate things. When does that mean you might be able to provide an interim update to stakeholders?
We just recently announced to the market that our new interim data readouts for both studies would be in H2 of the second half of this year, probably later second half of this year. So that is what we are anticipating, and that is what we are working towards.
And regarding the Ixempra trial, you adjusted the cutoff score there, and that's the DRP generated number that you use to help enroll the trials. Tell us about that and what was behind that change and how that might affect things.
Happy to do that, and thanks for the question, John, because it goes to something very important about DRP. We've talked about each drug-specific companion diagnostic, DRP companion diagnostic we develop is a composite score of the important molecular biomarkers we need to look at to arrive at a decision that a patient is likely to benefit or not. Typically, where we set that cutoff score is right in the middle, 50% or a DRP score of 50. That's based on about 15 years of our development of this platform, and now about 47 clinical studies that we've evaluated DRP in across many different cancer types and across many different cancer drug types. Typically, we start with 50%. In the case of our Ixempra study, we had started this study with a more stringent or a little bit higher cutoff than we usually do for some clinical reasons. It was at 67%. And again, to be flexible and adaptive as a therapeutic development company, we want to look at whether we need to change that score based on what we're seeing in the study. And in our Ixempra study, we made the decision that we could and should lower the DRP cutoff so that we're able to capture more of the likely responder patients in that study. And that's what we've done.
Okay, good description. You had mentioned that COVID had impacted the enrollment of the trial, and then you're also going to add some additional CRO resources. Have you seen things improve since COVID? I mean, one of the problems that the whole industry faced a couple of years ago was that there were just not enough resources, and there were clinical trial sites shut down. Has that pretty much cleared up now?
I wouldn't say it's completely cleared up. It's certainly in our view and experience has improved, John. And we, like most companies, through our clinical research organizations that sort of run the trial and manage the trial sites, through them and on our own, have over the COVID crisis talked to many trial site staff and the investigators who have told us directly that COVID had caused staffing shortages. Folks got sick, they had to be in quarantine. So certainly that impacted onto accrual and treatment of patients at the sites. We are seeing that improve for sure. I think we're not totally free of it yet, but it's improving. Secondly, there are only so many, so many trial sites out there and so many patients. Trial sites are competing to enroll the same patients in studies, and there are thousands of clinical studies going on. So that is also always a challenge, not just for Allarity, but for all companies that we have to take into account to ensure we have enough sites to get the capture that we need.
Well, Jim, thank you for the update on your phase 2 Ixempra and Stenoparib trials. That's great that they're moving along. Again, we have Allarity Therapeutics CEO Jim Cullem with us. Allarity Therapeutics, ticker symbol ALLR.